Hello, this is Randy, and welcome back to Brain Break with Randy and Keitho. I wanted to tell you a story that happened when I was much younger. As I was finishing school, the United States was involved in a pretty tough recession. Everybody I went to school with ended up moving home to live with mom and dad. Now, I was already married and had a child, and that didn't seem like it was a good solution to me. So I worked really hard at finding a full-time job. One of my professors, an adjunct professor, offered me a job in sales with a company that he had, but I'd need to move to El Paso, Texas. Well, I moved my family over there. Then I met my new boss at the airport, and we spent the week together. And he was teaching me about the products we had to sell and introducing me to sales and the company, their former customers that they had in El Paso. Now we made, I can't tell you how many sales calls we made that week, but probably 40 or 50. And then he went home at the end of the day on Thursday, and we hadn't made a single sale, not a single sale, even to former customers. He told me as I dropped him off at the airport, he said, if this doesn't work out, I'll move you back to Tucson and I'll find you something else to do with our company. So he said, I'm really sorry. Well, I had already made plans for the next 2 weeks, so I was stuck. I was going to make things work. There was a place I wanted to go to. It was outside of town. It was a kind of strange place. It was a trailer park slash water park. And this was a company, I guess I can tell you their name. It was called Service Industries of America and the Unilab division, where they had in this division, I was selling specialty chemistry, and I would carry a bag full of samples, and I would show people how these chemicals work by walking up and down the street with a big salesman's case. I mean, we're talking a big bag, and I would show people how these chemicals worked. So I walk into this place, I've got my bag, and I can't remember even what I said, but the lady said, you see that? I think it was like a bookshelf, one of the circular ones. She said, just move that out of the way and you'll see a really dark stain underneath it. She said, if you can clean that, I'll buy it. Okay. Well, I learned enough about the products that I knew which product to grab, and I grabbed a scrubber. I sprayed it on, I scrubbed it, and then I talked to her for a minute, and then I took a rag and I wiped it up, just like you'd see on ShamWow or one of those things. The stain came up. The lady was shocked. She said, everybody tries to remove that. Nobody can touch it. She says, I told you I would buy it. I will buy it. Well, I ended up selling her 20 gallons of this specialty cleaner. I can't even remember the name of it now, but it was an amazing product. It was unique to us. I had some really interesting experiences with this product over the years that I worked for them. And so I got out of there, I found a payphone, and I called that order in. I mean, people were screaming and jumping around because they figured I was a goner. My boss had already made it into the office that morning and said we had no success. It wasn't because of Randy, it was because of El Paso. It's not going to be a good place for us, which they'd already had problems there. That's why they sent me there. But to make a long story short, don't give up. I got to the point, and this was a really fun company and job. I got to where I would make my sales calls. I would do them in order of where I thought I was going to sell something. And then I'd go and prospect. I became pretty successful with this company. I wasn't with them for too awfully long because I got hired by a bigger company, Procter & Gamble, after a year. But what was interesting is that some of the customers I had were just amazing. I made friends with the guy that ran the Coors dealership and distributorship. And Coors is a beer that has to be refrigerated. When you have refrigeration, you don't shut those things off. So how do you clean a refrigerated warehouse or a warehouse with frozen stuff in it, like a beef locker? How do you clean that without just shutting it down and defrosting it like you would a fridge? Well, we had products that would take care of that kind of thing. I sold specialty cleaners to people that were working on buses, trains. I just had great experiences and a lot of fun. I realized I really enjoyed sales, even though I'd not really been exposed to it, but I was good at it and I enjoyed it. It was a natural high, something very exciting for me to do. But anyway, that going home that day after making that sale, and that was the only sale I made that day, was exciting. But this company had something pretty exciting. It was a program called the Spike Award. And basically, what you had to do to achieve the spike was you needed to make 3 sales a day for 5 days. If you did that, you won the Spike Award. Now, just so you know, uh, that was hard to do. But once you did that, all the other awards they had were even harder to achieve. So it kept pushing you to get better and better. Basically, it made you more and more successful. I had won that award probably 3 or 4 weeks into working for them. They were happy. I was excited. It meant a lot to me. And I recruited quite a few people to work for me. It was very interesting. I will tell you one story that I think you might get a kick out of. I went out to the Army base, which is Fort Bliss, and they had a Marine Corps detachment there. Now, the Army didn't care with the Patriot missiles. When those things would launch, they would leave turbojet exhaust all over everything. It didn't come off. Nothing would clean it. Well, I had a cleaner that would clean it, but the Army didn't care. But the Marine Corps cared, and they were training their people to use it too. So a gentleman there, Master Gunnery Sergeant, I believe, helped me get the right paperwork, at least what we thought was the right paperwork, and we turned it in. I don't remember how much later it came, but it was what came was from the Pentagon, a document that was an open purchase order. Well, I tried to get a hold of this guy, and he had been transferred from Fort Bliss to an aircraft. I finally got a hold of him. He was in Hawaii. He said, I remember that product. I'm glad you can sell us some. I'd already sold it to the Marine Corps out on the base. He says, I'm on, and he told me the name of the ship. He says, can you come to San Diego and I'll get you out here? I'm thinking I'll just go when it docks. No, I get to San Diego and they fly me out on the mail plane. That was an experience. And then I spent about 3 days showing this product to everybody on the ship. We could clean on an aircraft carrier when the aircraft comes in and lands. It's, they stop it so quickly and the pilot's stomping on the brakes that it leaves rubber on the deck. When that gets wet in the storm, it's just like driving on the road. It's slippery. Well, we could clean that, and we could clean the turbojet exhaust. There's a lot of that on a aircraft carrier, from both the helicopters, from the jets. I ended up selling them an awful lot. It would have been the equivalent of 3 rail cars. This product was not inexpensive, but we arranged for it to come in while the ship was in port. We shipped it in by rail, and they offloaded pallet after pallet, put it up on the deck. And they would put these drums on one end of the ship, take the bungs off both ends, and kick the drums the length of the ship. This product would go out, and then they'd start scrubbing the deck. They poured it on the airplanes and cleaned off the wings and the exhaust. I mean, that ship never looked or smelled so clean. It was an amazing experience. I'll be honest with you, after I made that sale, I'm not sure I worked very hard for the next 6 months. After that time, another company, Procter & Gamble, came along and recruited me to go to work for them. I learned even more about sales. But I guess what I want to say is, don't give up. Just because things look like they're not going to go well, don't give up. My boss, who was a good man, was convinced that I was not going to be successful in El Paso. He felt terrible about it because I'd already moved over there at my own expense. He promised me he wouldn't let me have to stay there. He would make sure I got back to home, which was Tucson. Tucson and El Paso are probably 350 miles apart. He just wanted to make sure that I knew I wasn't going to have to stay there if I couldn't make things work. But I did make things work. We, as a family, lived there for 5 years. It was 4 or 5 years. I was there with this first company and then with Procter and Gamble. When the peso devalued, they moved me, we hoped to Tucson, but actually to Mesa. And I've been here in Mesa since 1985 with my family. And it's been a great place for us to raise our family. We have wonderful friends here. We're really glad that we live here. I just, again, would tell you, don't give up. Life is possible. Think about the possibilities. Don't think about that it's not going to work. You know, right now in our lives, the world is crazy. It's so different from when I was growing up. When I was growing up, Walter Cronkite gave the news. And I never knew what he thought personally about the news, but I knew I could trust him. I did trust him. The same thing with the newspaper. If I read an article, I trusted it. Now the first thing I look at when I look at the news is who writes the article. And if, depending on who the publishing company is, I may or may not ever listen to that or read what that is about, even if I'm interested, just because I don't believe I can trust them. And it's a sad state in my mind. So again, never give up. Thank you so much for joining me for another edition of Brain Break with Randy and Keitho. Please tell your friends about us and like and subscribe. Hope you're having a great night. Take care.